What if your story could ignite a movement? At New Solutions Network, we merge truth, resilience, and reinvention, fueling shows that cut past the noise and light up what really matters: human potential. Police, athletes, survivors, incarcerated folks, visionaries, we bring raw, real voices the world needs to hear. Want to share your story? Want to sponsor change? Now is the time. New Solutions Network, unlocking the future, one voice at a time. Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Natanya Experience. My guest today is my dear friend and collaborator and, well, magical mystery human, Dr. Brandon Deason. I'm so excited to tell you all about him, have him share with you, open up a couple veins today, and really just kind of maybe poke a bear, but also show people maybe what you think on the surface isn't what's underneath. And hopefully some folks might find some things that relate to their lives. So welcome, Brandon, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Natanya. I've been looking forward to having just an open conversation with you about some of this stuff for a while now. So, looking forward to it.
Well, I thank you for being so willing. We're going to start with all the cool FOMO stuff for everyone around what you are doing right now. And we always start with all the good stuff, right? We
Mm.
start with how things are going, what you're working on, because I like to start with the high vibration. And then we'll kind of start to peel back the onion on the journey to get there. How about that?
Sounds good. So, yeah, I'm in my fifth year of business now with DDQX Learning, which is about teaching pre medical and medical students how to think like a physician before they're getting on their clinical rotations. There's a big gap right now between the didactic learning that you do in pre medical education and the first 2 years of medical school as well, that centers on, the science learning and that you need to know, but it misses how that translates into real human care and how you go from studying books and watching videos all day to interacting with a real human being, trying to go through all of the details they're giving you to what's most important, and then go back to somebody way more experienced than you and try and present a nice frameworked story for them.
Yeah. And I think there's respectful to some of the institutions and
Mhm.
organizations that you worked with prior, because the ones where you were, anyone can
Yeah.
go to LinkedIn and Google this. It's not really just them, but we will say that big part of essentially the first level is the MCAT. And
Mhm.
most people are aware of that board, just like, there's SATs for university undergraduate, and then there's GRE and those
Mhm.
kinds of things. And for medical school and the law school, it's the LSAT, it's the MCAT. And the
Yep.
MCAT is essentially that bar that you have to get through. And so there is a lot of structure around
Mhm.
supporting students in how to take the test to pass the MCAT to get into medical school. And you
Mhm.
happen to work for one of the
The largest, yeah.
largest company who did that. And you did that well, and you did that with your whole self. But
Mhm.
you found something with students that was missing what you just articulated, right? There
Yeah.
was more teaching to the test than rather teaching what you might need to know to actually
Mhm.
thrive in medical school.
Yeah.
And so you decided to branch out on your own. You already had your private practice and tutoring, but to branch out and provide that kind of education with that kind of lens. And it's quite admirable. It's quite risky. It's hopefully with reward, but not the same kind of reward as being tethered to a storied institution or academic
Mhm.
learning institution. You're doing it on your own.
Yep.
But I wanted to talk about, you know, what it was like to decide to kind of go out on your own and then go back from there a little bit
Yeah.
about more of your journey.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't an easy decision to walk away from a salary, a career, a retirement plan, benefits, to having to, make a complete step away to be able to truly start my own thing. What really inspired me to do it, though, was my dad, who had been an entrepreneur with a high school education. He ran a business buying and selling old style computer tapes that stored data. For those who don't know, back before we had terabyte size hard drives, you could store maybe like 500 megabytes on, one of these tapes at a time. And so he had a business buying and selling them that he helped, put me through college and medical school with. So he used to, in his Iowan style of love, tell me that if he could build a business with a high school education that could help put me through medical school, I sure as heck should be able to build a better business with that medical degree. So, on the anniversary of his passing, yeah. So on the anniversary of his passing is when I actually formed my company.
That part I didn't know before, even though we talked quite a bit. Okay, beautiful, beautiful. So really honoring his legacy and his inspiration in that moment and stepping away from a household brand name to try to forge your own path, to do something that you believe will serve more people in a more profound way. It's just
Mhm.
beautiful, and I thank you. Okay, so now let's get into the meat, right? Let's get into meat and potatoes. People think Dr. Brandon Deason, former medical advisor for the largest,
Yeah.
like, that you have it all, the path is laid out. Like you said, your dad said, "Well, listen, if I had a high school diploma," but it like everyone who we
Mm,
don't know or realize or recognize for, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. Maybe we can start where you wanna
mm,
start. You wanna start with sort of, I mean, you were open with me about even
yeah,
your academic sort of shift from being sort of, "This is very easy," to, "Oh, crap,
yeah.
it's not." Maybe start there and then get into interpersonal.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I did start off as the golden child going through school, graduated high school at 16, and started on a full ride scholarship at Arizona State University, going on campus with all those older folks going, oh boy, I hope I don't stand out too much. I did. Always had a baby face. But I
Doogie
really,
Howser. Basically, you're like the Doogie Howser of your generation, if whoever.
right? I heard that one for I think 2 decades now. Yeah, and so the people who use it on me these days, I go, "Listen, I'm old enough to get the reference, so I can't really be a Doogie Howser." But, yeah, I got, through the undergraduate education in the 4 years as planned, but I realized during my first application cycle to medical school that I was so full of myself. I only applied to the top schools in the country and got resoundingly rejected. And I was like, why? I have the grades, I have the MCAT. I checked the boxes for student leadership and research. What am I, missing?
You had
And
the baby face? I'm kidding. You had
yeah.
the accelerated path. You had all the trappings on the outside,
Mhm.
and we can look back and make fun, but I think young people today and a lot of folks midlife are kind of waking up
Yeah.
to those moments. Like, I thought I checked all the boxes. Wait, what? And
Yeah.
so you
Yeah.
had that at whatever, 19, 20 years old.
So yeah, that's when I learned the application cycles isn't it's not about just checking the boxes. You do truly need to be able to convey who you are as a person and who you're trying to become through this process. And so I didn't go right back to applying. I took 4 years off. I worked as an EMT and a paramedic, and I walked into psych facilities and jails and people's houses in lower socioeconomic status neighborhoods and dealt with whatever was in front of me for 2.5 years before I even started reapplying. And by the time I did, and I walked into that interview and they're like, what are you going to do if this doesn't work out? I said, I'm already doing it. I am a healthcare provider. I'm looking for you to expand my scope.
Amazing. I think that is a huge, huge set of lessons right
Yeah.
there. And it's not from on high, it's from within. And that's another reason I love speaking with you and the way I bet your students relate to you. We've talked about this a bunch where you often reframe and reset for them anytime they start to put you up on that pedestal, right? And you're like, no, I struggled with this too.
Yeah.
Or by the way, I got rejected the first time.
Yeah.
And just sort of level setting what that means. None
Yeah.
of those moments define the whole of who you are. None of
No.
those moments are like the failure or you'll only be this. The
Yeah.
other thing we talked about in the past, and I'd love to reframe this as
Mhm.
well, is, that you didn't have a silver spoon. This wasn't
Yeah.
like without other kinds of risks and challenges financially to also provide
Mhm.
for your life. And you also were a young father. So can
Mhm.
you talk a little bit about those dimensions of your being?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So when I did reapply for medical school, as I mentioned, it was 4 years later. And in that time, I'd met someone, gotten married, adopted their child from the first marriage, our child now. That's how adoption works. And then my son, she was already pregnant when I was going through the application process. So we already knew it was going to be a thing. And sure enough, he was born orientation week of medical school. So yeah, day 4 of medical school, my son was born. They let me skip Friday, told me I needed to be back on Monday.
Yeah.
So
Everyone listening
FYI,
to that, that's America and
yeah,
maternity leave for while you're
so thankful they let me have Friday off. Thanks, guys. So yeah, I was going through it as a young father, and even though I'd already adopted my oldest, a new father in the sense of a baby for the first time as well. And so it became feeling like I was constantly failing at both. You want to be as good of a parent as you can be, and the demands of medical school are too much to do as best as you could as a parent. And the demands of fatherhood make it too hard to give your best at medical school. So that's where I really started feeling that internal struggle of wanting to be a whole person beyond just my undergrad experience of your job's to be a good student and to just be a good student. So I did struggle a lot through the first 2 years of medical school and preparing for step one of the USMLE compared to any previous time in my life, not only because of the higher level of demands of medical school, but this constant balance. The only reference point I had was somebody else whose kid was born orientation week, and he quit 3 weeks in. And so
so not really a role model, but a
yeah,
reference point.
no, that was the only other comparison. I was like, all right, me and this guy are in it together. And he quit after week 3. And I was like, okay, nope.
So can I ask how I'm not saying it's one thing, but
Yeah.
how do you keep going? How do you keep that lovely smile on your face? I mean,
Yeah.
even when we've talked about some rough stuff in our collaboration and friendship,
Mm,
you almost as much the minute your voice will dip down, I
hmm.
feel you, like, literally, like, hoist yourself back up. You can even hear the lilt. I'm being honest, and
Yeah.
this is an honest show. We don't
Mm,
pay our
yeah.
people.
Yeah.
We just
No,
talk
no.
about our stuff, and,
Yeah.
I wanna talk about that because it is so beautiful and rare,
Mm,
and it's very challenging, and it's most people think that it only comes when people have everything going for them. So I
mm,
would love to hear, is there anything you can unpack or unbundle for
yeah.
anyone else about where do you draw from to be
Mm,
able to do that, like, "But it's okay because," and I
yeah.
feel that when you talk, when
Mm.
we talk about difficult things.
It's hard earned, to be honest. It's not a natural ability or skill. It's something that you have to have a resilient mindset somewhat on at the onset, but it's one of those things like what did I read? You can't like wish for courage without having to go through stuff that's scary. And like you can't wish for strength without going through stuff that really tests your ability to keep moving. And so part of it has just come with one, the things that have happened in life and just needing to find a way forward for the sake of my kids and
Survival.
the other folks in my life. And the other thing was actually going to therapy after medical school. I couldn't face it during when I was in it. Like there was still just too much stigma for me. And that's why I try so hard to break it down now for current medical students that it is okay to go and to seek help. And it's not a sign of weakness, but it's really helping you build a tool set to deal with the stuff that's going to come. And that's the other thing. Am I allowed to cuss on this one?
Well, yeah,
No,
if it goes for the radio, we just have to bleep it, right,
right,
Ryan?
but, I tell them, like, fucked up stuff is gonna come. It's gonna happen in front of your eyes as a physician. I've seen everything from newborns to 99-year-olds die in front of me. I've seen screaming, crying family members begging for you to keep trying. That stuff is always going to live with you. I've seen burn victims, 80% burned, and I sawed one of their legs off in a rotation. Like, that's not a memory that just disappears. So it's a matter of learning to contextualize. And what I got, during my med school years, I just shoved everything down, and I was able to get through it by being compassionate at face value without letting the emotions truly touch me. Whereas since medical school and therapy, I've learned to give space for those emotions and space for cathartic moments. But funny enough, I'll time cap it. It's like, you can throw your pity party, or you can be upset about this for the next like 10, 15 minutes, and like give it some space rather than trying to ignore it, and then recognize that it can't predominate my whole day. And I've got to try and find something else to focus on. And one of the best lessons, if I could just finish this one up, that I wrote for myself was that it's not a matter of good days and bad days. It's that every day has good moments and bad moments, and it's a matter of what you choose to focus on.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think, like, in psychology, we talk about cognitive reframing a lot
Mhm,
in terms of, I say we, like I'm part of
mhm,
the group, but just meaning,
mhm.
really being able to see something, take it in yourself, because what you're doing is you had that layer, right?
Yeah,
Okay, I'll let it in, but I'm going to still keep it contained enough to process and not wear it, and
yeah,
then let it go back out,
yeah.
and reframe maybe what you do take from it.
Mhm.
Maybe when you said, I'm trying to not get emotional even to think about it, because I get
Yeah.
very visual, visceral feeling.
Mhm,
We're talking about that. I was actually still on the EMT, honestly.
mhm.
I'm still 10 minutes ago in this
Yeah.
conversation, emotionally anyway. But just that, seeing into people's homes and lives as an EMT,
Mm,
seeing, quite frankly, abuse, I'm sure you did,
mm,
trauma, accidents, all the kinds of things,
yeah,
seeing people who don't live with basic comforts.
mm,
We talked about that, such that it also gives you a perspective of not gratitude like the way it's on script on a
right,
pillow and,
yeah,
millennial tchotchkes. I mean, more like, I have so much and so
yeah,
much ahead of me, so much
yeah,
that I can do to make this world a little better for the people I love and the people I don't even know that I'm here to serve.
right,
And then being able to believe that when
mhm,
there's darkness all around you, when there's cruelty, when I say
yeah,
abuse, it's not just the trauma. At least for me, it's why I couldn't be a therapist, and I tried a
mm,
couple times, because I would be like, not so there was one level of, like, especially if there was, let's say, a child,
yeah,
you know, their pain and their
mm,
trauma and suffering and what that makes you feel. But then you think about, how could someone do this, and the
yeah,
scale of it with what's in the news cycle today.
right,
I even give names for Epstein and all the like,
mm,
but just to say we're seeing the layers and layers and layers of really terrifying
yeah.
acts of human behavior and difference to other human life.
Right, right. So how do we as
I'm the good in this.
providers get exposed to that on a regular basis and stay both compassionate and whole ourselves?
And not question the value of humanity overall. We have
Yeah.
more clinician suicides than ever before. COVID exacerbated this. We have more clinicians leaving the practice of medicine for a host
Mhm.
of reasons than ever before. So, we're not going to go into why you're not practicing medicine versus doing what you're doing, but I will say, I'm just so grateful that someone like you is doing what you're doing, because you're really holding the next generations of our healers in your hands. And a lot of them may or
Appreciate
may
that.
not have gone through the path. And I
Mm.
think a lot of those ones who aren't maybe as
Yeah.
sure of themselves like you spoke about,
Right.
those might be the ones that actually have the best human interactions with others.
Yeah.
The tools of the trade
Yeah.
are always gonna evolve, right?
Right.
You know, the AI diagnostics, the angiograms, and now this is a robot's
Yeah.
gonna do the surgery. I'm not saying that's not important, but that's not where we're playing. We're
Right.
playing in the human inside the loop, the human in the
Yeah.
machine. That's also what we're doing together by trying
Yeah.
to help people want to be on this earth, want
Mhm.
to try after they fall down, and want to believe in others that this is a
Yeah.
kind and just world overall. All we're going for is what? 51%. Just 51%.
So yeah, absolutely. One of the things I, focus on with my business is I haven't produced tons of like content that's already made by other test prep companies because that's not my focus. Like there's already good questions out there. I write some, but it's more of like, all right, you've already bought the UWorld Q Bank. I'm not even going to try and fight you on that. And they have 3,700 questions. So I would rather help you make the most out of every one of those than try and make 3,700 more questions for you to do.
Yeah.
And what
Like a
I've
leader,
done,
and that's
yeah,
the thing, the leaderboard of it all.
yeah,
We see this outside of medicine, right? We see
mhm,
this in any field where there is essentially that lead the scoreboard of how you
yeah,
perform. So
yeah,
it's task, complete, do.
yeah,
And what you do that's so viscerally different is you look at the
mhm,
human being inside the leaderboard
yeah,
and you're like, how are you actually taking this information in? How are you
mhm,
looking at that patient outside of that case
yeah,
question as a composite of multiple variables rather
mhm,
than just the 4 specs on, their A1C and did you do
yeah,
this and what have you. So, it is really incredible, and then that way you're like Doogie Howser all over again because you're kind of the sage
mhm,
mystic and to me, you're still kinda young. The sage mystic, meaning looking beyond to the
mhm,
next definition of this is where the box was, and now I'm
right,
making a circle with all these boxes inside.
yeah,
And, without naming names, you've shared about several students who, quite frankly, we don't that's not where you pitch your services, but that
right,
you seem to feel like the delta for the change has been so
mhm,
dramatic because they may not have even been able to
yeah,
go forward, and now they are successfully practicing medicine because
mhm,
you found within them an ability to switch a few things that were not just about how much you can memorize or how much you can be a dancing monkey in
right.
the MCAT.
Yeah, that's, my passion over the last 4 years with my one-on-one tutoring has been helping the folks who have either already failed step one, which for just a little bit of context for the listeners, USMLE step one is the exam that medical students take between their second and third year. And if they do not pass this test, that is on the first 2 years of medical school content, they do not get to start third year. You can be $200,000 in debt from the first 2 years of med school. And if you don't pass this test, it's all for naught. So, taking students who have failed this exam or on track to fail it and aren't seeing the path forward and being able to really dig in. They're smart students. They've studied plenty. Like nobody who's come to me, it's been because they're lazy,
It's not, and it's not about aptitude or about
Yeah.
effort. Exactly, that's important to say.
So
Um,
yeah, it's that whole person and being able to identify, there's the knowledge you need, but then there's the skills you need to be able to consistently apply through an 8-hour timed multiple choice exam. And I also tell them that's not a reflection of your ability to be a future physician. It's a reflection of your ability to sit for 8 hours and answer 280 questions. And for the
like a quest. It's like a
neurodivergent
mythic
students,
quest.
like a lot of the other students I work with, shout out to my ADD, ADHD fam. Like those are another big group that I work with because ultimately that's the hardest thing for them. You have to sit
Right,
down for 8 hours and answer questions.
right. Where in practicum, that rarely happens.
Yeah,
Actually, that's
on
efficient.
rotation,
You're
you're
never gonna
walking around, moving
right,
around, seeing
right.
patients. Like, yeah, you're
And that's
mentally
that's kind
working,
of an
but
interesting
yeah,
juxtaposition, right? Like, the thing you have to do to pass the gate, if you
yeah,
will, to get to the next stage is actually nothing like where you're going.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is a steadfast requirement.
Yeah.
Can we go into some other topics, if you're
Hmm.
open, around not too many personal details, but that not only are you a father, that your
Hmm.
children have special needs, that
Hmm.
not only are you an accomplished student, you're also, you're neurodivergent.
Yeah.
Not only blah, 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 you didn't necessarily come with all the financial resources to
Hmm.
happily saunter through the education system. Like, I would love it if you'd
Yeah.
be willing, and you're not doing this as a complaint or poor Brandon. I'm saying this also to the
Yeah.
world, right? We're doing this to show the cards were stacked with a lot of challenges. Like, Brandon did the parkour of human life to get.
That's a really nice way of putting it. I like to say that I ran into every wall face first,
And I'm
picked
like,
myself back up, climbed over it or got around it, and now I'm trying to, show people like here's a little step ladder or another route so you don't just hit it quite as hard as I did. But yeah, my, parenting is a wonderful thing, but it's also a random thing. You don't know what you're going to get. You picture two little versions of yourself popping out, and you get two vastly different tiny human beings who come with their own set of trials and tribulations. And for us, that was my son having autism and my youngest daughter having speech apraxia, which is an issue with speech production. She could understand everything just fine, knew what she wanted to say to us, and then just like couldn't come out right. So part of stepping away from medical practice and going back to medical education for me was being a part of their lives every day, because when I was in medicine, I was waking up and leaving the house before they were awake, and I was getting home either at dinner time or after bedtime, 6 days a week. And having kids with special needs that, you know, I couldn't be so limited in their involvement. And the other thing that drove me to entrepreneurship eventually was just how, my dad was there every day growing up while he ran his business. So, that was really the big change for me when the residency program I was with didn't end up working out. I Instead of relocating with my fellow folks, I looked at just staying there in Philadelphia because I'd gotten my kids into CHOPS services, and we
for
had
those who don't know,
yeah.
just this, the special, you might just say what CHOP
Yeah.
is.
Oh, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. One of the top ones in the nation for children's care, and especially with special needs. And getting diagnoses for special needs can be really hard. We weren't able to get I was suspicious my son had autism when he was 18 months, and he was diagnosed at 4.5 years old.
Yeah.
3 years it took to get the diagnosis. So by the
And
time we got
you're
him,
an advocate with health knowledge. Like, imagine if English wasn't your first language, or you
mm,
didn't have the clinical background. Like, that's what, that's a whole other layer. That's like 7 other episodes, right?
oh yeah, my ex wrote a letter to the governor to finally get like approval. It was so ridiculous.
Which is another
Yeah,
NSN group we'll talk about
right.
today,
But
about our patient advocacy
yeah,
arm, to help people not have to feel like it's a full-time or part-time job just to get basic
yeah,
care and services.
yeah,
And again, we're not even saying that these are, beyond, we're not even saying whether it should be paid for or not, or medical debt involved. We're just saying the actual care.
yeah,
So, but also, without revealing too much, to say, these are choices, but at the same time, there are choices with a trade-off that was pretty large and unknown. So you were
yeah,
making that choice, but you also, like you said in the beginning, now steady income, not there.
yeah,
Not exactly, financial leaning back on anything in your family. All that investiture into the medical school. So that
yeah,
most people think, especially those who aren't in the field, that, just doctors make a lot of money. So, what's the problem, kind of thing. So I
mm,
think understanding that these choices were all quite layered and quite difficult. I
Yeah.
think the fact that you said you ran into them face first, um, is very honest, but
Mm.
it does appear to be that you have this ability to be more like a Spider-Man, kind of bounce off that wall, leverage it
Mm.
there and be like, "Okay, that hurt, but I'm gonna do
Yeah.
this now."
Yeah,
And
and it didn't feel like intentional choices at the time, a lot of the times. It felt like dealing with what I had in front of me, and then after 15 to 20 years of that, I went, "Huh, I think it all works out for me to be, like, in this one niche, like, as somebody who experienced both X, Y, and Z." That no so it wasn't really ever in my plans that this is where I would be today. Like if you had asked me 10 years ago, what's your 10-year plan? Or 5 years ago, because I wasn't still quite started this, and I wouldn't have even known where that was heading because I was still working for that company thinking this was where my career was. So it's more at a certain point in your life, you look at the cards you have in your hand and you know, another colleague of mine loves that ikigai diagram stuff. I don't know if I'm saying it right. But, in my brain, it's like these are the cards I have. And after med school, I realized I'm an MD and I can do
right.
this. And that's what my career turned into.
So let's just before we close out, I would love
Mm.
to, now we don't do, there's not a commercial, but
Mhm.
I'd love to have people know a little bit about DDQX Learning. I
Sure.
know, so outside of the one-on-one tutoring, you have a
Mhm.
learning platform. Yes, we
Yeah.
also are excited to talk about how we're going to be collaborating and expanding our
Mhm.
world and bringing Brandon more into our world, especially as we look for data and outcomes in our tools as well. And the reason
Mhm.
for all of that is for people to understand who we are, why
Yeah.
we're working together, and where a lot of our content is seen at the university level, especially
Mhm.
undergraduate. And we want them to have real stories about real people's lives, about real people's struggles. We believe a lot of the self-help world is essentially built on parameters of essentially use cases that don't
Mhm.
speak to a lot of culture boxes, don't
Yeah.
speak to a lot of truths. They don't speak to a lot of things that ultimately, like you said before, there's knowledge and skills and
Mhm.
this other layer that we talk about, which is sort of the attitudes, beliefs, or you could say your
Yeah.
culture, meaning
Yeah.
why you do what you do, whether it's the man box, whether it's the
Mhm.
Caucasian middle class box, whether it's immigrant box, pick a
Yeah.
label or layer those labels.
Mhm.
Why we may or may not move forward isn't just about the knowledge or the skills or the opportunity alone.
Yeah.
And so, if you can, just talk a little bit about the kinds of courses, especially, I mean, for example, like the white coat secrets and things that
Yeah.
you're doing, that I think would just be interesting to share.
Would love to. So, DDQX Learning is in a really exciting expansion phase right now where we're going from the 4 years I've done in the one on one areas where I have, hand to God, 100% outcome success. Every student that has ever come to me for help with MCAT and med school admissions has gotten into US medical school. Every student who has come to me for step one, who has failed, was on track to fail, they've passed with my help. They've gone on, students who want step two CK help have scored well and residency admissions, they've gone on to get into US residency. Even an IMG who came to me with a 214 step 2 CK, which is well below the like 250 average right now, still got him into a US residency by telling his story. Um, what we're expanding to now is the courses. So the first four that we're launching this June are focused around the tagline that I developed years ago, think like a physician. Well, people have always asked me, like, what does that take? So I've broken that into four courses. How do you learn like a physician, reason like a physician? And then for our medical students, how do you diagnose like a physician and treat like a physician? And so that's our first round coming out in June. But then we do have 8 more courses under production as well that are really more whole student focused. We have Rich Doc, Poor Doc to teach you some of that financial foundations.
Maybe a nod to Rich Dad Poor Dad for those of you who don't know the reference.
Yeah. We're going to show you how to ethically use AI to accelerate your education. We're going to show you how to build resilience for those messed up things ahead. But then, yeah, I also have 2 White Coat Secrets courses where I'm going to give you some of the insider info of how you need to present yourself as well as possible on clinical rotations, because their perception of your ability is what determines your future, not your true ability. So, how do you perform under that as well as possible? And then, how do you get yourself in the best position as possible for match day? So that's, which is
Amazing.
what people really care about. How do I get to the next stage?
Well, I thank you so much, and I think I'm so glad you spoke about that. I think it's really, really rare to have someone as humble as you with as much achievement as you and all the people that you help fuel underneath. You're such a service-minded individual. It's beautiful. There are many institutions, very established clinicians who are involved in DDQX advising. It's an incredible, incredible cadre of humans involved. I'm very honored to have been in the wings, in the advisory group, and in a support group. That sounds
Mhm.
wrong, but in a supportive group
Yeah.
of academics and industry folks who are looking to have well-rounded. We talked about,
Mhm.
things like the whole person, whether they be nutrition, financial literacy,
Yeah.
all the other areas that we're going to be bringing our worlds together to bring surround sound for essentially the future healers
Yeah.
of tomorrow. And I thank you, Brandon, for letting us be on this ride with you and sharing your story with us
Absolutely.
today.
I love you mentioned the nutrition one as well, because I just renamed that course Practice What You Preach.
Well, it's one of those, like the
Yeah.
doctors who smoke or that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Nobody's a perfect human. However, these things that we put to the side,
Yeah.
especially when you're maybe gonna be not having a lot of time to think about or money, what
Mhm.
you're eating nutritionally or
Yep.
sleeping or all those. So we're kind of going back to basics, right? Like
Yep.
build a better human, build a better doctor, but not in a way that's not tenable. And I think
Yeah.
that's what you do that is so different, is that you really meet all of these young people where they are in a
Yep.
way that's very rare. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm so happy to know you, happy to
Wow.
call you a
Thank you.
colleague and a friend. And thank you
Yeah.
for your time.
It's the small changes and the daily habits that's what I really teach even my test prep students. It's not There's not one best thing to prepare for these exams. It's making yourself take the small steps every day and realizing that those add up. I help you make sure those steps are as much as possible in the right direction. You're not wandering too far one way or the other, but you've still got to be the one taking the steps every day, day in and day out.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you for your time today and being on this journey with us. And we can't wait to show you more of what Dr. Deason's got cooking and how we're going to do some fun things together. And so stay
Mhm.
tuned for that. Events and conferences. You'll see traveling the
Oh, yeah.
globe. And yeah, just have a wonderful everything.
Thank you so much for having me, Natanya. It was wonderful as always to chat with you, even if it was, not our usual random like phone calls in the late afternoon,
I'm like,
right? Structured interview time. Yes. Mm. But it
okay.
was a blast.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll talk soon.